Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface. And Father, today I want to discuss something that goes in line with what we were talking about, the Jubilee of Hope. And it's probably going to be the specific question from my standpoint, maybe situation, of what can make life hard. And in this particular situation, I kind of really feel for the last while, I don't know how long exactly, but I feel like I've been doing things pretty well in terms of living the faith, doing it as, basically what I would call Jesus points. Doing as we discuss here, treating people correctly, living a virtuous life, trying to be holy. But I look at other aspects of my life, it's like, well, why aren't these working? So like if we're doing so good in this area of listening and being kind and obviously living the sacramental life, why is there these downfalls over here that are creating such a big shadow that is casting over the light of the goodness in which I'm trying to live here? And I know that there's a natural inkling that happens with any process of, well, if there's this great big problem, maybe what you're doing isn't working and you should change the whole thing up. So I bring this up for a bunch of reasons because apologize for being vague, but in the vagueness, I know that I captured a lot of different people going through similar events. It might not be the exact same situation as mine, but the core concept being, I think I'm doing things right in terms of the faith, but there's other problems in my life that are big time and real. So what should I do about this? Should I keep going down this road of what I think I'm doing right in terms of being holy, a virtuous life, and let this problem, this shadow keep growing around me and potentially cause ramifications? Or do I just keep going as is and believe that the shadow will go away? So I know that that's probably too vague to give a really concrete answer about, but I do know it's something that everyone goes through at least at parts of their lives, and I think it's something worth to address here in today's episode.
Yeah, if I'm following what you have in mind, uh, there's this idea that, well, I guess a criticism against the faith would be that it's somehow unrealistic, idealistic, Pollyannish. Oh, that's nice. You're going to do all these things, but then you're not going to address real world problems. There are people who are conniving and manipulative. There are processes that are corrupt and are going to undermine you. There are powerful forces that are just going to run you over. And you're just going to go be goody two shoes over there, and everything is supposed to work out just fine. That sounds ridiculous. I'm going to use my skills and savvy and everything else and live a normal life. And you can go be your pious, irrelevant self somewhere else. It's kind of like that.
That's a way of putting it.
Trying to draw a stark contrast, and especially around maybe a little bit of a kind of cynical, worldly wise approach to things. Um, and I guess I think with what I presented anyway, there are a couple of problems. First of all, having faith, being pious, praying and trusting God is anything but naive, Pollyannish, goody two shoes. So some of those caricatures are misplaced. There are incredibly engaging, savvy, successful people who are extremely faithful and devout. I have to say, it's been one of the nicer, nice discoveries of maybe some more recent chapters of my own faith journey as I came into the monastery, and then I've gotten to know more and more people in the course of just who I am, living out the priestly ministry that I have. But getting to know CEOs of companies who really stand by a Catholic ethic in the way that they treat people and the policies that they establish and what they expect of their employees and what they expect of themselves. Um, they have a lot of temptations in terms of money, power, honor, pleasure to compromise on faith principles, and they struggle to walk a line of, I mean, when you're invited to a business dinner where you're getting served food at $500 a plate or something, or somebody's breaking open $1,000 bottle of wine, or some of these kinds of extravagances, or when you're being offered money under the table, or other subtle or not so subtle forms of bribery. How do you handle that? When it's you have a business meeting on a Sunday, and you don't want to miss mass, or you're traveling over a weekend, and you want to keep faithful to that commitment to the Lord, to keep the Lord's Day holy by at least attending mass. How do you handle that? How do you do that when it's going to require you to miss something that's important in that space? And so the real struggles of people who are in places, relationships of power and money, and have to make hard decisions and try to find the balance of that. On the one hand, not just sort of excluding themselves from every dinner where nice food is served, because anyway, the people that are making the food and providing the food are also worth their wage, and there can be a good, just because something's expensive doesn't mean it's evil. Now,
Mhm.
that can get, prices can get inflated, and things can become corrupt in other ways. But um, so really seeing people walking those lines, living in those spaces, and genuinely bringing Christ to those spaces is very inspiring for me. And I think I've seen a range of people being sort of nominally Catholic to really faithfully Catholic, people being willing to make less significant sacrifices to more significant sacrifices. And I've seen that lived out in a variety of ways. But the point is to come back to the original question. Just because you're really going to live your faith devoutly, and even at a cost, doesn't disqualify you from being in a world of power and influence. Um, again, it's hard. I mean, we saw the vice presidential candidate both want to say he's a faithful Catholic and unabashedly compromise on a critical point in the faith in terms of his support of abortion, even if that's the abortion pill or some accommodations to abortion legislation with no explanation. So those are huge pressures that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I also know, somebody who had a private meeting with Trump and was unafraid to tell him, "You're way off the reservation on this. You're supporting the abortion pill, and you're supporting in vitro fertilization, and this is completely contrary to the biomedical ethics of the Catholic Church." Of right reason. Actually, it's not just the Catholic Church; just the Catholic Church has consistently taught a coherent ethic. But anyway, she called him on the carpet, and he didn't understand what either of those things were. Apparently, he thought the abortion pill was the day after pill, and he thought that IVF was something that was pro-life, when it actually destroys far more lives than it creates. So um, all of that being said, it's not easy to do those things. It's not
Mhm.
easy to stand up for our faith. It's not easy to witness when it's not going to be well received. It's not easy to live that out. But just because someone is faithful doesn't mean that they're a wet noodle, or that they're living in their own world, or that they can't engage in the game with the other power players of our time. So that's one dimension in which the kind of caricature of the faith is maybe mischaracterized. The character of the faith is
One of
wrong.
those things where you say similar words and it's hard to plan it out. No, I get
Yeah,
that. So
where
a
that
couple of
characterization of the faith is a caricature, I guess.
yeah. So a couple of thoughts there. One of which being that you mentioned there that you come with the it's hard to talk when you have the expectations you're going to get a negative result. And one of the things that I think is really profound in all this is that when we're talking about relationships, it can be pretty difficult to pinpoint someone to only one result. That there's always many options, and normally a lot more than we can forecast as far as how someone could respond to something. It's to me, it's one of the mysteries of biology in terms of the different indicators and the different ways in which our internal cells can be pushed based upon the same stimulus. So let alone guessing what someone else would do. Now, certainly we can put assumptions in place that says, hey, telling someone who's a giant narcissist that they're wrong normally is going to end up in them not being happy. That's a fair thing across the board. It's one of the diagnoses of being a narcissist. However, it's not always a 100% thing with any situation, any relationship. And I think that that's one of the things to recognize within ourselves is that when we're talking about relationships, there are some rules that are consistent, but there's nothing as hard and concrete, unless I'm missing something, Father, here, such as gravity. If I throw a ball in the air, it doesn't matter how strong I am, eventually that thing's coming back to Earth. And if I'm talking to you, there might be something that I say to you that really like sparks a deep curiosity. Sometimes it will give you joy that, hey, this guy finally got what I'm trying to teach. Or sometimes it'd be like, no, you're completely wrong. How have you missed this for the last 7 years? And it can all virtually be things that are very similar in what I'm trying to say, but they all come out a little bit differently. And I say this as both as an inspiration to have hope in your conviction, but also in a reason to have courage, and that there is no guarantee that in a relationship with another person that you know how they're going to react. And sometimes just giving the other person an opportunity to respond, good, bad, or ugly, will really surprise you in a lot of different ways. So I bring that up as a carry-on point, is not to lose faith and to actually give a backbone to the argument in which you're saying, this is how people can not be wet noodles, as you just described, but actually have conviction within the faith. But with all of that being said, it doesn't mean that every single day is going to be sunshine and rainbows, and that we can be living the faith in a way in which we do feel we're doing right. We do feel that we're living virtuously, we're holding the sacraments. But there's something else that's going on, maybe within our control, maybe not, that is not going awesome. That might be outside of what the traditional limited viewpoint of living a sacramental life would include. So when we have situations that are putting pressure upon us, making us feel as though, you know what, maybe I can't do this, maybe I'm not adequate to do whatever that task might be. Might be make the high school varsity team. It might be, whatever, get a promotion, whatever the case may be. It feels in direct contrast if that's not going well, but we think we're doing well in the faith life. And it can create an imbalance within us that, depending on how imbalanced it gets, could be pretty turbulent as far as what direction I should go. But people that feel that I'm doing good in terms of living a faithful life, I think I'm doing things virtuously, but I have this other area of my life that is just not going the way I want it. Maybe I got broken up with, maybe I got passed over on promotion, maybe just something negative happened, and it feels like it's so consuming and so real that it makes me feel unbalanced, I guess is the way to put that.
Yeah, well, being faithful doesn't mean life goes well. So the most faithful person suffered the worst death. Behold the cross. So there's no question about that. Things are going to go wrong. Things are going to go badly. St. Peter says, if you're going to suffer, suffer for doing good, not for doing evil. And so that's one way to think about it. At least you're suffering for doing good. And on the other hand, so what does the faith give you if it doesn't give you success, and it doesn't give you an easy life? It doesn't give you what you want. Well, often it does. First of all, I mean, living a virtuous life does have its own rewards to it. There's enough of a positive turnaround for doing what is good that was a principle more clearly articulated in the Old Testament. It's missing something, of course, but it is still largely true that the just man does live a good life for the most part. But there is the exception, like Job, at a large scale, or there are the exceptions in our own personal lives where even though we're doing good, things are not going well. And that's something that still in our Christian faith, our faith benefits us in those circumstances because we can find in suffering a positive value, a positive meaning. We can find in suffering a path to love and communion with others and with our God. And so suffering in itself is not the last word. Suffering in itself can be a pathway to a deeper meaning, a deeper value, a deeper communion. And that's not a kind of magical step that like you snap your fingers 3 times and say the magic words and suddenly everything feels better. But it is a path, and it is something that we can grow in. And it is a place where we can have hope and confidence that suffering does not have the last word. And whatever's going badly in my life does not have the last word. There is a path forward from here. And even if it takes me a little bit of time to find it, even if it's a bit of a struggle, there is a path forward from here, no matter where we find ourselves.
And that's such an awesome thought to end today's episode on. We're going to be a little bit shorter today and next week, but we do look forward to seeing you again next week. And we thank you all for sharing with us and sharing the episodes with other people. We've seen a tremendous increase in the amount of listenership, and we thank you all for really being the direction of doing this. It's all been word of mouth that has made Father and Joe successful, and we thank each of you for being a part of that journey and helping us grow. We will be with you again next week.